Hello and welcome everyone to this next presentation with Neola. My name is Eric Castle, MedTech Analyst here at ABG. Very happy to have Hanna Sjöström with us here today, the CEO of Neola. And I'll leave the floor over to you right away.
Thank you so much, Eric, and hi, everyone. Really nice to see you all again. And I'd like to tell you about Neola Medical's vision to revolutionize the care of preterm-born infants with our medical technology innovation that has an extraordinary potential to really upgrade the current standard of care for preterm-born infants with our medical device that is continuously monitoring the lungs of preterm-born infants with an instant detection of lung complications. My name is Hanna Sjöström, as I said, and my previous experience also gives a note of my commercial background, which I think is especially important in this type of industry with a very strong commercial focus and a market launch plan for the US. And I'm very happy to be CEO of a medical device company that is in a late development stage. We have developed the world's first medical device for continuous lung monitoring. And we have already now, before a CE mark and FDA approval, sold our first medical device to an EU hospital now generating real-world evidence, and also a paying client of 60,000 euros for our first system. We're also listed at Nasdaq First North Growth Market in Stockholm since 2020, and you find us under the ticker Neola. But now, why invest in Neola Medical? Well, first of all, we have a very large and growing addressable market. The market is growing because we have an increase in number of preterm-born infants being born. This is because we have more mothers being over 40 when they first have children, but also the success of fertility treatments, especially in the US, leading to more twins and triplets, which is one of the causes that this market is growing. And that means there's also a focus on intensive care. We also have a very great need and demand, and I'm going to talk more about that in this presentation. Also, we have a technology that is proven. We have just finalized a large clinical study on 100 babies, which is proving the technology readiness for this product. And also a highly experienced team with a vast experience within the medical device field, and also experience in taking technology innovation to market before. So we're entering a market that is growing and non-cyclical, and it's also underpinned by some very favorable trends. First, we have the growing number of patients, an increase in preterm birth worldwide, which also means an increase in patients with RDS, respiratory distress syndrome, which is a condition that approximately 80% of the preterm-born infants are suffering from, which means that they need continuous lung monitoring. We also have a global market that is expected to grow and to reach in 2026 $2.6 billion US dollars, and also a very strong margin potential, especially within this landscape and intensive care. But also we have the fact that the FDA has seen that medical device towards children are expected to be 10 years behind the development in the same medical device with adults. And this has led the FDA to set in specific projects in order to bring more medical technology innovation to the care of infants in the US. So that's also why we, for example, a very hands-on example, we get very fast response time when we're talking with the FDA. And we also see a huge potential addressable market worldwide. So there is a growing preterm birth, which also then translates into the number of neonatal care clinics increasing around the world. And that's also translating to a demand for technology innovation and a willingness to pay. What is especially interesting is the US market with as many as almost 400,000 preterm-born infants yearly and almost 23,000 NICU places today in the American care. We have also done market research with neonatologists and neonatal intensive care directors in the US showing that there is a clear need for our Neola instrument in at least 70% of those beds. So here you can do a very quick math of the market opportunity. It is also a global problem. We have as many as 1 out of 10 babies that are born too soon, and many in need of intensive care for their survival. So we're talking about 1.1 million babies that are actually dying because they're born preterm every year. And it is because being born preterm is the second highest cause of death for children under the age of 5 after pneumonia. So it is very dangerous to be born preterm today. And that's why also the UN has set a specific goal in their Agenda 2030 that year 2030, no child should die of being born preterm from preventable causes. And that's also why we're getting so much attention from neonatologists all over the world. This is a very big clinical need. And it is a clinical need because these babies that are born preterm get very severe disabilities. As many as 50% of the very preterm-born infants get what we define as severe disability at age 11. They typically get cognitive and learning disabilities. They get a lot of problems with their sight. They also get problems with their movement, maybe need to do a wheelchair, and also chronic breathing problem. Something that if you're a teacher or are in the school environment, you know that many of these children will have problems playing with their schoolmates, but also doing sports as they grow up. So definitely problems that we need to solve, and that's also the reason why we developed Neola, Neonatal Lung Analyzer, our medical device for non-invasive and continuous monitoring of the lungs with an instant detection of lung complications. Now, what can then the doctors and healthcare professionals see on the screen? Well, now they see in real time the lung volume of left and right lung, and they also see the free oxygen gas concentration inside of the lung. This is completely new information to the doctors, and this means that they can monitor for the very first time these babies in real time and be much faster to detect when they have complications. Because if we look at what's in the current standard of care, the healthcare professionals, they have technology, but a lot of the technology that is used today in the clinics are very old-fashioned. It's old, it's invasive, and it's very slow to detect problems. So what you see here is that they have X-ray, they have blood sampling, they have some bits. Some of the modern clinics have started to introduce ultrasound as a way to try to replace X-ray, and that is also because these methods are very invasive to the baby today. If you have an extremely preterm-born infant, they have approximately 1 deciliter of blood in their body, and the guidelines say today that you can only take between 1% and 5% of their blood every day. So of course that this is something that is very then restrictive to the healthcare professionals, and they definitely need other ways to surveil to do surveillance of the baby. And that's why also that we are getting so much attention then for our medical device that is continuously monitoring their lungs. It's non-invasive, which means that we're not breaking any barriers of the skin, which is very important for the neonatologist. And it's also then very fast to show results. So we're updating the screen every second, so it's an immediate detection of lung complication. The doctor then can know exactly also where the complication is, right side or left side. So what I'm presenting here today is a new precision care with really the potential to upgrade current standard of care. Mainly three things that the hospitals and doctors are looking for. First is, of course, a faster detection of lung complications, which then can prevent further morbidity. So all of these problems that I talked about previously, but also a decrease in number of days in intensive care. And this is especially something that the US hospitals are very interested in, and it is because the reimbursement in the US care system today gives a much higher reimbursement for the first 2 days in care, and then it's decreasing for every day. So there is an incentive to really speed up the stay in the clinics, and we believe that we're also able to prove that we can do that. So both a financial and a health incentive for the hospitals to adopt our technology. But also a decreased time for visual observation by the nurses. So today, for the sickest baby, you have in the clinic today 1 nurse per baby, looking at the baby, trying to figure out what's going on because they don't have technology to do that. For the a little less sick babies, you have 1 nurse per 2 babies. So it's a very personnel-intensive care today where we really need to facilitate with new technology. We also have very strong support from key opinion leaders within our field. For example, Professor Dempsey, who is one of the key opinion leaders within neonatology in Europe, he says that the Neola system really has the potential to alter the way that we monitor these babies today, and then also especially looking at them more closely in real time. And as you can see here, reduce X-ray exposure, because it's very fact-based that when you get an exposure of these babies, maybe the size of your palm, to an X-ray on a routine basis every day, there is an increase in getting cancer later in life. So this is something that the neonatologists are really looking to change. And that's why also Professor Dempsey was the first to purchase our Neola system. And he also has initiated an investigator-sponsored clinical study on as many as 100 newborn infants. So that has been proceeding very well this year. The study is now completed, and the subgroup results from the first 50 babies was presented at a congress in Florida in the US this spring. And they are very positive, the results that we see so far. It really confirms that the technology works well for monitoring lungs. And also, it gives us a lot of confidence in the potential of Neola in the future care. We are also getting a lot of publications in the most prominent journals within our field. So Pediatric Research just published an article about our technology here in this summer. So we're getting a lot of traction from clinicians all over the world. Now we have a very distinct path to market launch, which is of course important for our type of product, where it takes a pretty long time to develop the product, but also to go through the regulatory process. So milestones are important to us, and we have always achieved them to date. One of our most recent milestones is that we was certified for our ISO certification in 13485 just a couple of weeks ago, which means that we now have the foundation in order to sell medical device internationally. We're now also getting into a very interesting and commercially focused phase in the company. So now we're starting our technical verification studies and our clinical validation studies. We have had an ongoing process with the FDA for now 2 years, and we have a good understanding of their requirements in order to get an approval. And we're aiming to send in our technical file to the FDA to be granted by the end of next year. So very exciting times ahead. We are also in parallel, of course, focusing on getting a CE mark and have a parallel process for that. When we're coming to market, we have a classic approach with a razor blade model. We're selling one Neola per bed per baby, so it's a system, but also then with disposables that need to be changed daily on the baby. We also know that we're fitting under the existing reimbursement umbrella for neonatal intensive care in the US clinics. Our commercialization plan is focused in 3 steps. First, we have our pre-launch, which we're in right now, where we have sold our first Neola device in order to get publications and a lot of clinical data. Especially important for us is it to get investigator-led studies, so studies that we're not leading ourselves, because that gets us stronger results that the doctors find even more trustworthy. Then we're entering a launch phase. We're focusing on the European urine countries, but also the American market. And then we're heading to scale in, especially China is a very interesting market for us, because they're still suffering from their one-child policy, which means that they also need to save the babies that they get. So they have really focused a lot in neonatal intensive care the past years and have a very high standard of care for their babies. We also now have the funds in order to complete our plan. So ABG has led this transaction for us during the past couple of months. We now secured 44 million SEK to the company, and we also, as part of that, got a new 3rd biggest shareholder with LMK Forward AB, who is a long-term investor for us, who is especially focusing on technology that has an impact to change the world. Patent is a very important part of our company as well. We have 6 patent families covering all the major assets of the company, both medical patents and technical patents, patents connected to the product. We also acquired the technology rights to the TDLA's laser platform, electronics platform, that we have integrated into Neola. We did that this summer, and that means that we now all own all relevant patent within the company, which is, of course, very strong in terms of IP security. We're also focusing a lot on preparing our patent portfolio for us being on a more mature market, so that we're starting to build a defense wall as well. In terms of our team, we have made a very big change in our board of directors this year, which means that we now have a professional medtech focused board of directors with a lot of experience, from example, Stille, Getinge, Cellavision, Atos, and also, for example, Hexpool, who are very big in experience of M&A. So we now have a very strong team in place, also from our board of directors. So with that, as a summary, very large and growing addressable market, a great clinical need and a demand for our product, very attractive business model and to secure recurrent revenues, also a proven technology and a highly experienced team. So with that, thank you so much for listening, and I'm opening up to questions.
Thank you, Anna. Interesting presentation. First, I just want to come back to the patent graph that you showed. GASMAS, I believe, is the key technology here, and that expires in 2026. I mean, once that expires, how protected are you from someone else doing the same thing, basically?
So we have built on that medical patent and have another patent that we have approved in China. It's also filed in Europe and the US. That is another version of how we monitor the lungs in the body. So that is one way for us on building on these older patents in order to protect also from the future. What has been most important for us now is to focus on patents that are connected to reduce some of the offset of the signals, which means that it will be very hard for competitors to actually get our technology to work in an intensive care environment. So we're also protecting us with technical patents related to the technology.
Oh, that's good to hear. And then in terms of collecting data, I guess having a supportive data set is very important for getting a broad reach in the US and also getting approved. But just thinking about FDA, what do you need to prove in order to be approved in the US? Do you need to be better than some sort of predicate device, or is it something else?
So we are doing a de novo application in the US, which means that we are completely new technology, so we don't need to reference us to another technology. So that's a very good first base. And then we need to do an observatory study on preterm-born infants, and we're going to do that in the US. That is also within the field, I would say, a simpler study that we believe that we were able to do during next year.
And in terms of reimbursements, do you think this will be covered by, say, CMS, or would this be something that clinics need to pay for themselves and sort of market that towards parents?
So we have done very in-depth projects when it comes to reimbursement. It's a very important question in order to succeed in the US. And we know that we're fitting into the overall reimbursement umbrella for the clinic. So we don't need a special code for Neola. What is important for us is to convince key opinion leaders within the field to buy the first products, because they have a very high purchasing power, and they will be the one who's really driving the adoption of Neola in the US.
And I follow Getinge as well, and I know that their sort of new generation neonatal ventilators offer some sort of diagnostic capabilities. But do you think ventilators could ever be enough, or do you need this sort of technology as well?
So this technology is, of course, perfect to integrate into ventilators. And that is also what we're hearing from neonatologists all over the world, that they love the technology, they really see the clinical need for it, but in the future they would love to have it integrated into the ventilators. So that's also why we're getting quite some traction from the industry.
Okay, good. And a last question for me. You're focusing now on neonatals, but you mentioned that pneumonia is a leading cause of death within children below 5. I mean, could this potentially be used for those older children as well, or is it just neonatals this could be used for?
So we're developing this specific product for the patient population of preterm-born infants, because the clinical need is so obvious within this field. But of course, we have had a lot of traction from intensive care specialists for children as well. It will be also our next step to try to broaden the patient group also to children. And then we have an ongoing research project with Lund University that is focusing on potentially taking this technology also to adults. It will take many years, I believe, but I think it's very important to start that work now. We saw in the light of COVID, especially the need for an upgrade in lung monitoring and an upgrade in technology in intensive care. So I'm pretty sure that that's where the future is heading.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all the questions I have for you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll be back soon with Context Vision.